Hello and welcome everyone to the final webinar of our fall series for 2024. I'm Tina Lee, CyVerse's User Engagement Officer. Today's webinar features Enrique Noriega of the Data Science Institute and the U of A Department of Computer Science, who's presenting on empowering biomedical literature understanding through LLMs and HPC. Before I turn the webinar over to Enrique, please open your Zoom chat window. And if you have any questions for Enrique, please type them in there. I'll read them in so that they're on the audio of the video recording. We do post these video recordings on our webinars on our website and also on our YouTube channel so that you can review at any time. Enrique has included a short introduction of himself in his presentation. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Enrique.
Thank you, Tina. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm happy to be able to present today's webinar. And the title is Empowering Biomedical Literature Understanding Through LLMs and HPC. In reality, it's going to be a little bit more than just LLMs, but I don't want to spoil it for you. And I want to speak briefly about myself. I am a researcher at the Data Science Institute and the Department of Computer Science. My research interests lie on natural language processing, specifically on building applications using large language models, particularly oriented to the biomedical domain. So pretty much help medical researchers and life sciences researchers applying AI for their own research. So as the first part of this presentation, I'd like to introduce you to what is the motivation behind what we're talking today, and pretty much a common theme across the work that I do here at the university. And to do that, I want to show you this particular plot. So what you see here illustrates what is the growth rate of PubMed. And PubMed, for those who are not very familiar with, it is a premier repository for research in the life sciences and in the biomedical research. It is housed by the National Library of Medicine, which is a branch of the National Institutes of Health. And it contains multiple components. So it is a great resource if you're a researcher in biology or medicine, because pretty much all the work that is carried out having federal funding with respect to medical domain and the life sciences has to be archived here. And that's I think that is almost all of it, except whatever happens within like the bounds of proprietary research in pharmacy labs. And there are two main components to it. One of them is Medline, which is a repository of abstracts, and it has millions of abstracts of articles. So it's pretty much an index of everything that's out there. And there's also another subset, which is called PubMed Central. And that's a full text repository. And that contains, as the name implies, the complete text of the articles. One of the key aspects of them is that they're openly accessible, and we can download them and process them with computers, which is pretty much the focus of what I do. Circling back to the point, you can see that regardless that this particular plot is a little bit outdated, well, you can see that there's an enormous growth rate of the publications that are being archived there. And this reflects with the actual nature of what is going on. Research productivity is increasing over time significantly. And as you can imagine, if you're an individual or a research group that has finite resources, it is very much impossible to have a comprehensive and exhaustive picture of everything that's out there. Like you're going to have a pretty good picture of what you care about, but if you want to look for everything that's on the literature, it's going to be pretty much impossible because the amount of content is way too much for someone to keep track of it. But fortunately, we have computers to help us with that. And we can use these automated tools to help us navigate through that signal that we're seeking through all that noise that is out there. For example, we can use AI and information technology to search for relevant articles. We can use it to obtain insights automatically and help us draw hypotheses based on whatever is the state of the art that is reflected in the literature. And like to avoid like burning the lead, one of the central approach and blueprints that we're going to see that is commonly used for this type of tasks is retroalimented generation, and it contains multiple steps that we're going to be looking through the rest of this webinar. We at the university have a high performance computers, clouds and clusters that allow us to carry out the tasks that I'm going to show you that are possible using AI and computer science. So I'm speaking about tools, but I don't want to be too generic. So what is one of the main tool belt that we have in order to be able to slice and dice through this information? Well, it is called natural language processing, but that's still a little bit abstract. So I want to tell you a little bit about what is natural language processing, and there's no like one size fits all definition. But if I had to summarize it, I could pretty much say that it is pretty accurate to assert that NLP is in part the application of computational techniques to understand text written by people, for people. And how does NLP look like? It is very pervasive, and we use it every day without being aware of it mostly. But some of the explicit examples of what we can do with NLP is sentiment classification. So this may look like, like you're reading a product review on Amazon, and you want to, like there are millions of customers, and Amazon wants to know like which are the best reviews, which are the positive reviews and negative reviews, such that they can be put at the forefront for you to actually read them. So sentiment classification is something like that. There's also like spam detections. Like if you work here at the UFA, we have systems that try to route automatically irrelevant emails to the spam folder, such that you don't have to waste time for it. We use NLP for that as well. Also, like something pretty popular is machine translation, which basically means that you can go take one text in virtually any widely spoken language and translate it automatically to virtually any other widely spoken language. So English to Spanish, French, German, Japanese, Chinese, as long as there is a significant amount of information out there on the internet in that specific language, we can develop AI tools to translate them. There are underrepresented languages, and there's a huge area of research done with those. So I'm pretty sure that in the future, that virtual part of any language is going to disappear, but we're not still there yet. Something else that we can do using question answering is using NLP is question answering. This is basically like asking a question to a computer, like if you were asking it to another person, and better off like getting a response as if you were speaking to another person as well. And all of this seems pretty basic to us, probably, because us, by being grown-up humans or people, reading and reasoning comes natural to us because language is a skill that most of us acquire through growing. But for computers, programming them to carry out language understanding tasks is not a trivial thing to do, because computers operate in bytes or in string of symbols. So they just see like this is a sequence of letters, but what is the meaning of it? So that is the concern or the object of study of natural language processing. So this list that I'm showing you here is not exhaustive at all. There are some other things that we can do with it. And particularly, I want to spend some time speaking about another one, which is commonly known as information extraction. And in order to introduce it, I want to show you an example here. So if you consider this phrase that says that Enrique is talking about AI tools to the biomedical community, or replace biomedical with the CyVerse community, or just the community of the University of Arizona, it is going to be information extraction is going to be the sub-discipline of natural language processing that allow us to extract some structured information out of this. So how does this look like? First, there are a series of concepts in the real world that is represented by the words in the sentence. Those concepts could be basically mentions of people or organizations or groups, basically any noun, either proper noun, common noun, or any pronoun organization that represents a concept. So once we have that, we want to know what are the relations between those concepts that are being talked about in this sentence. And for that, here there's a predicate that says that someone is talking about AI tools to someone else. So that predicate is what is underlined. And here we can clearly see that there is a relation between the subject of this predicate, who is Enrique, and the object of the predicate, who is the biomedical community or the community at large. So once we know these pieces of information, we can pack them together into a computer-friendly riddle form that can be used later on to do useful stuff, such as turning it into a database or drawing some type of conclusion out of it, etc. But what does this have to do so far with reading biomedical research? So we can use the same principles and apply it to literature that occurs on research articles that are stored in PubMed or somewhere else on the internet, on archive, and whatnot. So I want to show you, this is a real world example of how this looks like on a sentence that contains a piece of mechanistic information. So in here, we are looking at how different concepts interact with each other, but the concepts, instead of being people or organizations, are proteins or genes or chemical products that occur within a cell. And the predicates are basically verbs or actions or stuff that happens within the biology bounds of that cell. So a first step could be like, we need to find what is that predicate, or also on the language of information extraction, we sometimes call it a trigger. And that trigger here is inhibits. And inhibits is like a verb that has some very specific meaning on systems biology. So once we have that identified, we need to find which are the concepts that are related together through this inhibition. So we need to find a biomedical entity here, which in this case is the subject of a phrase, which is CYLD. And then we need to find then what is the other end of this relation. And here we have two candidates. So could be TRAF2 or TRAF6. So once we figure this out, we can put together those pieces of machine readable information that encode knowledge that we can use later on to power downstream elements of that virtual augmented generation pipeline that I was speaking on the first place. So I also want to highlight here that this particular example is a little bit more complicated than the toy example that I showed you before, because we can see that there are actually two bits of information packed together into a single phrase here. Both share the same subject and the same predicate, but the object is different. So for one of them is going to be TRAF2, and the other one is going to be TRAF6. And I really don't understand like what is the underlying biological meaning of this, but through the syntax I can figure it out. And this might come handy for someone who's looking for new ways to develop a drug that targets a specific disease. So once we have all this together, like this is the conceptual shape of how the process looks like. But then I want to talk a little bit about how do we achieve this. This type of information extraction tools there are multiple ways to approach this problem. But one very common way to do it is through the use of supervised machine learning. So supervised machine learning is one branch of artificial intelligence. I mean, I overall simplifying it, but it's basically, if I had to summarize it, it basically means that it is a family of algorithms that allow a computer to teach itself how to recognize patterns based on examples. So how does those examples look like? So there are going to be an input and an output with respect to that input. An input here could be the complete phrase that we're seeing here, and the output could be that structured piece of information about an event or a relation that happens between the concepts in the real world. So instead of us having to go through the rules, we're going to let the computer learn to figure it out itself. And this is a multi-step process, at least for information extraction. In the first step, we need to recognize the concepts. So the concepts are going to be those names, those proteins, those diseases. Then we need to normalize them to a database. The reason for this being necessary is because there are sometimes synonyms, like we could have multiple names. If you're speaking about a person, you could use the first name or the full name, or there may be an alias for someone. Similarly, with biomedical literature, you could have the complete full description of a protein or a gene product, or you could have the abbreviation. It doesn't really matter because it means the same. It's just a convenience to use one or another. And we want the computer to be able to group them together such that whatever inference happens down the road is going to be accurate, and it doesn't think that we're thinking about separate concepts. Finally, once we have this normalized set of relations of concepts recognized, we want to proceed to identify which are the relations between them. This is in my opinion, the most crucial step, because these relations is what endow the meaning that we're trying to encode through writing text on English or any other human written language. So why is this information extraction important? Because, like, as I showed you, like you can infer meaning or extract information out of unstructured text, but I just show you a single standalone example with a phrase. In reality, you want to deploy this at scale. So as I was showing you, if you're looking at PubMed and you have 7 million papers, each paper is going to have, I don't know, say 200 sentences in average, and probably just a fraction of those contain knowledge relevant to us. But this scales up. So we can repeat this and actually be able to create knowledge out of it once we piece together all those individual pieces of information. And this knowledge will be used later on to elicit some higher order type of insights, such as looking for hypotheses or asking for summaries, mindful about the mechanistic information and whatnot. So all this is sort of computationally expensive, but we can make use of the high performance computer cluster to repeat it, because in the end, we're reading sentence by sentence, so we can easily parallelize it. Once we do that, say that we assume that we have a relatively large database of information, structured information that was put together using information extraction, we have a new problem. So that problem is that there is going to be a relatively high or low signal to noise ratio. So we're going to have a lot of information. Most of it is not going to be relevant to our specific information need. So how do we go about it? And this is where the other side of the coin, information retrieval, comes together. And information retrieval, I like to define it as how to find a needle in a haystack. So you can think about it as you think about search engines. So these search engines are basically tools like Google or Bing, in which you input queries and then you get back a list of documents that are relevant to you. So if you use Google, you probably are going to look at the first top 3 results, even though you could have a result list that has hundreds of thousands, because they are ranked by their usefulness based on the query. So what is a query? So a query depends on the nature of the tool that you're using. Sometimes, or traditionally, these search engines or information retrieval systems work through keywords or phrases. So what they did is that you input a question or a list of terms, and it gets broken down, and it looks for documents that contain all those terms. But this is relatively simple, even though it'll take you 95% of the way in. Sometimes you want to be more sophisticated about it, so you could do a full logical expression in which you're looking for documents that contain this term and this other term, but not this third term, or another type of logical predicate. So it can become pretty sophisticated. But lately, well, traditionally, this is what has been done throughout the decades. But in the last couple of years, a new paradigm for search has picked up, powered by artificial intelligence, and that is the word embedding search approach. What I mean by that is that, I'm going to show you next slides for this, is that if you look at the picture to the right, when you input a question or a query to a search engine that works with word embedding search, that query is going to be mapped to a numerical representation. And that numerical representation represents or encodes the actual semantics or the meaning of what you're looking for. Using that numerical representation, the computer can compare it with the list of documents that has been encoded on the same way. And those documents that are relevant to the question are going to be close together in a vector space. So there's no need to elaborate about this. Instead, I will defer you to the picture here. What it means is that if the query and the document are close to each other, they're relevant. If they're far away from each other in their angle, they're not that relevant. So the way, like this is conceptually simple, but the devil is in the details. And the way to encode that meaning into that numerical representation consists in making use of language models, such as large language models or encoder language models. And I'm happy to talk about this after a presentation if you stick around, but for now, that is enough. So computers are made such that this type of comparisons are really, really efficient and can happen really, real fast. So that is what you see on the right side of this slide. On the left side is just a picture of how the keyword-based approach works. So the computer just keeps track of an index for each word that we have in our corpus of text. And then we have an index, we have a list of documents that contain it. Then if we look for a term or a list of terms, we can just take the intersection of all of these documents and return it to the user. So using this type of technology, information retrieval, we're able to search and slice and dice through the information that we extract using information extraction tools. But that is not the end of the picture. So in the end, we're going to get a filtered down view of the information that we have, but it's still formatted in a way that is meant for computer consumption, not for people's consumption. And this is where the large language models play in. And their role on this, on the virtual augmented generation framework, is that they are used to eloquently elicit insights based on the data that we are able to find. So I want to try to define what is a large language model, or LLM, briefly, without getting into the technicalities. But you can think about it as a giant computational program that is able to generate language in a way that is coherent and looks like it was written by another person. Under the hood, it fundamentally works as a predictor of what is the next word based on its prior context. So think about it as an autocomplete utility that you write down a prefix, which could be an incomplete sentence, and this large language model is going to give you the words that have the highest probability to be next. If you extrapolate this concept to complete the whole phrase, you get an application of an LLM. The way that these LLMs are trained to achieve this varies a lot. That is where the whole field of research around large language models is concerned. So fundamentally, they're trained to complete stuff, but then some really smart people were able to figure out that you can train them such that they complete these sentences as if they were following an instruction. And when they do this, these LLMs are able to exhibit some quote unquote emergent capabilities, such as reasoning over the text or understanding what we're asking them to do and generate human language accordingly. So it is important to note that this is not really intelligent machines. They're just statistical machines that have seen enough data that the text that they output is coherent, but they're not actually reasoning under the hood. So that's where some of the limitations come in and why people like me still have a job, basically. One of the caveats about it is that these large language models require a significant amount of computing resources. How does this look like? This pretty much means that you need either a workstation machine that contains really expensive hardware, or if you go to the other end of the spectrum, you need access to a cluster that contains several hundreds of GPUs to be able to train it. So usually people like individuals such as us do not have easy access to these kind of resources, unless you work at a tech company like Google or Meta or OpenAI. But fortunately for us, the University of Arizona and universities in general procure this type of hardware, and through different funding efforts spearheaded by the NSF and initiatives such as CyVerse, we're able to get access to computers that allow us to do research based on this. So LLMs, even though they're really useful, they still have a lot of limitations. And some of the main ones is that they hallucinate stuff. This is an inherent an artifact inherent to the nature of the LLM, because they're designed to predict the next word. So they are going to basically spit out content that is coherent and appears to make sense, but they have no way to figure out what is the factuality about it. So they're going to say something, and sometimes they're going to make up something, but there's no warranty that what they do is actually real, or if it just sounds like it's real. Sometimes they're also stubborn. So I was speaking about following instructions. So sometimes even though you try hard to make it follow the instructions, they're not going to work, because this is how machine learning systems base work, and they're expensive to maintain, because you need to have access to a server, and you need to procure a CPU, and that server needs to live in the data center. But there are mitigations for all of these shortcomings, such as the retrieval augmented generation framework that I have been speaking about. I'm going to show some examples of it later on, so I hope that it lands home safely. We have guardrails, and guardrails are basically methods such that we can reduce the amount of content that is being generated by LLMs that might be harmful. Like, like there could be inaccurate stuff, or there could be hateful content, or people may abuse from LLMs. We want the guardrails to be able to spot this and filter out that type of non-productive knowledge or information. And finally, there's a lot of research about agentic behavior. So agentic behavior is sort of like using these LLMs to get some introspection about the output that they generate to guide them towards what is the next step to do. So you can think about like a higher order programming of language models such that you can achieve more useful stuff. So with this, I have put together all the pieces that we can leverage in order to do useful stuff out of biomedical literature. I want to show you like how everything fits together. And I want to circle back to the slide that I showed at the beginning of the talk. In the retrieval event generation, there are multiple steps. The first is that we need to process a corpus. A corpus is nothing more than a collection of documents. So this collection of documents could be PubMed Central, or it could be your course materials, or it could be a collection of documents or clinical notes that you have access to. You're doing research in a hospital. Once you process that, you want to build a knowledge base. So you want to build a database of that encodes the actual information that is written down, but is readable by a computer. This is where information extraction plays in. When you do this, you're going to get a lot of information that might be accurate, but might not necessarily be useful for your end goals. This is when you go to step 3. You want to find those relevant documents. And this is where this word embedded search approach and keyword phrase-based approach come into play, such that you can find elements that are likely being relevant. Once you get that, like you can read it, but it's not going to be pretty probably. So you want to digest it such that you use that information to actually answer the question that your research question or your command. And this is the last step. Let the LM arrive or do some inference and arrive to conclusions. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the tools, or briefly mention them, some of the tools available to specialize for this workflow on the biomedical domain. About information extraction, there are 2 families of systems. One of them are symbolic and the other is statistical. So symbolic systems use rules, and that means that you basically encode the program that you want to follow, like, search for a verb that says inhibits, then search for the subject, and then search for the object. That could be a rudimentary rule. One of the advantages of it is that it is there interpretable, meaning that as long as you understand how the system operates, you can read them and you can figure out why the computer extracted the information the way it did. They have high precision because there is control over what you want it to extract, but they are high maintenance because, like, given the sheer scale of the data, there are going to be a virtually infinite number of variations. On the other hand, there's the statistical systems. These often work for LLMs. You can think about them as black boxes, and you basically command an LLM to find, like, you give it a piece of content, and you ask it to extract the information in the format that you want. They have high recall, meaning that they're likely to find most of the stuff that you're looking for, but lower precision, which means that there's going to be a lot of false positives. And they have low maintenance in the sense that you don't have to tweak them too much. Like, you just adjust the prompt. This type of systems are going to be able to find mechanistic pieces of information, such as biochemical reactions between proteins and biological processes. Such as here we have regulation, like we go in orders of abstraction, and we have the suppression of a regulation of a chemical that ends up into a chemical reaction. And this is the type of stuff that probably a cancer biologist would be looking at and look for evidence out of research papers. There are multiple systems to achieve this of both analysts. About rule-based systems, we have Reach, which is a rule-based system that we have been building for the last decade here on campus. And it was originally put together to do or detect cancer biology related protein-to-protein interactions. There's also MetaMap, which is an UMLS annotator. UMLS is a meta-ontology that contains entities. So this is the normalization database, but has multiple underlying databases such as UniProt, Mesh, etc. And so it is really comprehensive, and it is really old as well. So it's been around for a while. There are also statistical-based systems that make use of these language models, such as CyVerse or the Genie attacker. So CyVerse is an NLP pipeline that is being trained on a dataset called Mentions. And Genie attacker is similar to CyVerse, but this one is trained on Medline abstracts. So Medline is a part of PubMed, and if you're looking at PubMed as your object of research, then this might be a good system for you. About the information retrieval systems, there's nothing like specific to biomedical domain because the underlying principle is the same and it's agnostic of the domain. So there's a very popular system called Elasticsearch that is about keyword-based retrieval. And one of the advantages is that it's scalable and very highly optimized. It has its own programming language, which is really useful, and people make careers around it. That's pretty much all you have to know about its reliability. And about the word-embedding search approach, there are also very good systems such as Weaviate or Pinecone. Weaviate is an open source vector database. We use it here on campus on CyVerse as the backend of our AI Birdie retrieval augmented generation. And Pinecone is a commercial cloud-based offering. They are both for embedding-based retrieval, and they work basically with any encoder-based language model. So the specialization into the biomedical domain is going to be depending on the actual encoder-based language model. So here is where it actually, there are actually models that are tailored towards this domain. But what is an encoder language model? So they're similar to LLMs in principle, but they are generally much smaller. So they can run on consumer-grade laptops. Their job is basically to create a numerical representation of phrases that encode the semantic similarity between them. And what I'm showing you here to the right is a screenshot of Hugging Face showing a demo of this PubMed MS Marco, which is a model by Microsoft trained on PubMed. So the idea is that if you input a query such as the source sentence, and I type here IL-6 is shown to be correlated with inflammation, I'm going to compare it to some other sentences that could be the database that we're looking at. And the first one, cytokines are related to cell death, is in domain, but the other ones are irrelevant to it. So we would be looking at which is the highest ranked sentence, and it got it correctly. So this is the basic principle of encoding that similarity. One is identical series completely unrelated, and we want to find we want to maximize that score using this encoder-based language model. We also have some visual analytic systems that have been put together in order to explore or give a human-friendlier interface to this type of information extraction systems. Because one of the main problems is that once you have a lot of information, if you want to visualize it, you're going to get this hairball effect that you see to the right. So you are going to have probably hundreds of thousands of interactions that once you create or visualize a network, it makes no sense. So there's no real way to manage this. To fix this. Instead, you manage it. And we built a user interface system that we've been using around through prototypes with multiple collaborators in campus that implements a paradigm in which first we narrow down the search space looking for something specific, and then we start looking at the periphery of the relations once we find something that is worthwhile looking at, we expand that network just in that direction. And how does it look like? So basically, we can center our search around a specific element. Here I'm showing it for IL-6, interleukin 6, and we can see which are the different concepts that are related to it. And by related, like which are being influenced, which are influenced by, or which are reciprocal with. We can see there are different type of concepts like biological processes, organs, different chemicals or diseases or any other proteins. Once we find something that is actually useful, then we can click on it and get a bird's eye view of how much evidence is getting or connecting those two concepts together. So how in this data set, how is IL-6 related to inflammation? We can see that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that says that IL-6 promotes inflammation. But there's some evidence that goes the other way around. So like this might give you some mixed signal. So maybe you want to actually look at what are the details under it, and then we can actually see what is the actual information, like the actual text that encodes that meaning. So here we're going the other way around. We go from the structured information to the actual evidence text. So we can see the sentences that encode this interaction, color coded with aids, such as, like the endpoints of the interactions are italics and underlined. The actual predicate that establishes that relation is bold. The nature of the interaction is color coded. So since it's green, then we have that something is promoting something else. And with this user interface, we're able to, tag stuff to be able to look at it later on and start carrying out research project. We have some other views which might not be too relevant, but we have an information retrieval keyword-based search index that allows to look into this, and it's really, really quick. So this only takes into account 2 of the 3 steps, which is the information extraction and information retrieval. But in the future, like we're actually working to use LLMs, and specifically want to revisit that RAG pipeline, such that we can take all this collection of information and get more human-friendly outputs that leverage the LLMs to eloquently articulate the response that we're looking for through our research questions. So what I am showing you here is a representative text. Don't pay attention to the accuracy because I use AI myself to help it put together, but it contains multiple interactions between elements. We can use an LLM to compel it to extract that information. For example, here, like if we were looking at this specific passage, we can get an LLM to tell us which are different interactions and what are the pathways that are encoded in there, all the way to point it through the attribution or the provenance that backs that extraction. So IL-6 is related to MIL6R. I'm not sure that this is something real, but it makes the point. And the screenshot that I'm showing here actually comes out of AirBirdie, which is one of the LLM facilities that we have on CyVerse open to our research community. But still, this is meant to be consumed by the computer. But we can actually ask an LLM to get a succinct summary of these interactions. It'll give us something that is more useful for us to understand. So this is one of the nicest properties of the LLMs, and this is where part of my work is headed towards. So how do we achieve this? Like I'm showing you just out-of-box results, but as part of research, you want to improve the quality of these responses. And to do this, we use 2 approaches. First is fine-tuning. It requires, which requires significant engineering skills, but achieves the best results. So we need to compile together a large data set of information to use this supervised machine learning to teach the LLM to get us better responses. But we can also use in-context learning, which is a trick, I could say, in which when you ask an LLM to do something, you show it examples representative examples, like this is what I want to do, and this is an example of how an input could like if you carried out your instruction perfectly. You can give the examples like this is not what you want to see. Once you do that, you get actually surprisingly pretty good results, better than not giving examples, but you will hit a ceiling. So there's just so much that you can do using context learning. So there's a trade-off. You don't have to spend the hardware resources in order to fine-tune something, and you can still get a boost on performance, but it's not going to be as good as if you were actually fine-tuning your own language model. And finally, I just want to say, like, okay, I'm saying that we require serious hardware to do it, or like if I work at the University of Arizona, where can I do it? There are multiple resources, and it depends on what specific aspect of the pipeline you're looking at. If you are looking at something that is ridiculously parallelizable, that's how in computer science they call it, you want to use the high performance computing cluster because it scales to hundreds of CPUs. And if you just basically have the same task and you want to repeat it in a lot of different data, like SIMD is called, HPC is ideal for this. Like it's relatively easy to use, and you can use it cheaply. It also has some GPU access. So I encourage you to go to the link that I'm showing you here on my slides and take a look at it. If you want to share data or share information or analysis, you should take a look at CyVerse. iRats is ideal for data storage and sharing. And CyVerse contains cloud-based workflows if you are someone who likes cloud-native DevOps. And they also have some great facilities to share your applications, such as hosting a web interface such as the one that I showed you with networks, using the Discover environment and Vice applications. And finally, if you want to do serious research fine-tuning large language models, you need GPUs that are probably newer than what we currently have at the HPC. And the NSF has put together some great resources such as Jetstream2 and the National AI Pilot, the NIRE, to get basically free access to GPUs. This I'm saying free, but you need to propose like it should be meaningful. So you need to apply to a proposal to get an allocation. But these also work with cloud-based workflows and is compatible with Cacao. So if you're versed on CyVerse, it's going to be relatively easy for you to get in. So if you are interested on getting an allocation for Jetstream2, talk to us in CyVerse. We can help you work out the details. So that is all for now. I think I exceeded my time a little bit, but I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Enrique. If there are questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly. That way it's in the audio of the recording. This is our last webinar of the semester, and I did want to mention that going forward, the CyVerse webinars will be incorporated into the Data Science Institute's DataLab series of free workshops and webinars. So stay tuned for information on that and what our lineup will be for this spring. Are there any questions? Okay, let me just
Tina, I had a question.
Oh, Shravan,
Yeah,
sure. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Enrique, amazing talk, by the way. So,
Thank you.
do you have any advice on how to select models for embeddings? So, if we have a bunch of text, and if I go and look at all the different embedding models from OpenAI or other different providers, are they basically all the same? The text encoding that comes out of them, is that really just compatible and it won't matter which one I pick, or is there like a
So
art to that?
there's a difference. It depends on what is the type of query that you want to ask for. There are some that are fine-tuned for sentence similarity. There are some that are fine-tuned for question answering, meaning that your query should be a question, and the other end is likely to be ranked higher if it contains an answer to that question. And the way to look at it, like, is that there are some benchmark websites which people like post how their embedding models work on different data sets. And some of those data sets are going to be domain specific, like biomedical domain specific. So you could go there and search for the model name. Nowadays, like everything, like it is great that the industry has coalesced to sentence transformers using Hugging Face, such that you can just load that model and reuse the code. You just change the name of the model. But like if you prefer like a cloud-based provider, the OpenAI embeddings are generalist, but they have seen text such as Puppet. So they, even though they're trained on a lot of stuff, that lot of stuff also includes a significant chunk of or subset of biomedical information, or in likely any other domain that you're looking at. So like it's a good rule of thumb that depending on the domain, you want to pick a model that has been fine-tuned on a similar one. If nothing else, like assuming that you have a uniform probability distribution, you can pick the base generalist model that appears on that benchmark.
Okay. And if we are writing our own benchmarks to figure out if the embeddings are correct, are there any suggestions on what evaluation metrics to look at to see if is it like just
Yes.
closeness of embeddings? Okay.
Yeah. So like there are like blunt metrics such as cosine similarity, but sometimes you want to take a step forward, and there are like semantic similarity measurements that have been designed to correlate highly with human judgment. One of them is called BERT score, and they're model based as well. So you could use them in like presumably like on literature, they're widely used, and presumably they agree with human annotators. But I would advise that you try them and then still look at some cherry picked random sample of your data to make sure that it is coherent.
Okay.
So there are multiple. There's BERT score, there's blurred, there are some lexical metrics such as blue score or Roche score. Like I think that everything is French now. But you can look at those, or we can talk about it in more detail if you want.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about it in more detail offline. I also wanted to understand how to select the dimensions for these encodings correctly and what benchmarks to use. So we can talk offline about that.
Of course.
Enrique, thanks, Sharon. We do have time for one more question. The question is, could you draw the big lines of the topic modeling workflow? I'm not sure if, Manuela, if you want to explain in further detail what exactly you're talking about. And Manuela, you are muted, so.
Yes, I'm really sorry. English is not my first language. I'm from Quebec, so I'm trying to explain. I'm librarian, and in most of libraries are trying to do some LLMs personalized, like disciplinary, as you talked about, Enrique. So yeah, there are a lot of librarians taking up the topic modeling in finance, health, science. I don't know if you know Carrot 2, or I cannot think of another tool right now, but it's about topic modeling with LLMs.
So it is so great question. I'm not an expert on that specific topic. However, based on what I know,
yes.
there exists, like lately, as far as I understand, the state of the art are also encoder-based language models. And there's one specific one that I've read on papers multiple times called BERT topic.
BERT topic, yes.
What that's going to do is that it's going to encode or cluster together documents that are topically similar. So you can use basically, say you have a collection of text, you encode each text with BERT topic, and then some unsupervised clusters are going to emerge, and each cluster represents a different topic. Now, those topics are not, you don't get a name out of it right away. Instead, you need to do something else. Like you could apply a word cloud algorithm and get the list of terms that are the most prevalent across those documents. And then you could probably take that list of terms and pass it through an LLM to ask it to generate a topic description. So that is what I would do.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of processes, things are iterative, aren't they? You just keep trying till you improve your own system. Okay, are there any further questions for Enrique? Enrique, thank you so very much. And everybody, thank you for joining. And we'll see you in the spring in our next webinar lineup. All right. So thank you, Enrique. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.